What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and I've got a hopefully rather quick video for you. As you can see from the screen, very large, front and center here, the primary stats website I use when talking about League of Legends is lolalytics.com. I think it is great. It's a pretty good power user site. You can do a lot of individual breakdowns. You can do a lot of kind of searching yourself for what's actually going on here. But the thing I wanted to bring up is for those who don't want to go and look for themselves, we've got a very quick, hey, the patch is live today. What is OP, what is not? If you guys like this, let me know. I'll do this more often, even though you can look for this yourself. All right, so 11:14 happened, and just real quick, just so you know, like, just so we're all on the same page with what we're doing, I'm looking at all ranks right now because we are on the first day of the patch. We do not have enough data to use high elo reliably, and look, in general, champion movement is going to be the same regardless of elo. In most cases, yes, there are going to be exceptions, whatnot. For example, I know in the patch rundown we talked about how early game is more high elo focused than late game, and that probably is still true. So there are going to be limitations to the methodology, but let's talk about it right now. Okay, who are the big winners? Taric is doing really well, plus 2% or so win rate. Doing well in top, which is interesting. I know I have seen some like quasi-funnel, like top Yumi, top Taric, that kind of thing. It's a possibility that's still there. But Taric doing really well. One of the big winners of the patch. Off to the side over here, despite it being out of the Nerf Champions column, yeah, Tahm Kench is doing really well. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think the change list is the cause of the almost 7% win rate lift. Keep in mind the way this is being measured is it looks at all of the Tahm Kench games from 11-13 and then compares that win rate across the million or whatever games to the 10,000 11-14 Tahm Kench games. So there's two limiting factors here. One, people got better at Tahm Kench over the last 2 weeks. So even if there were no changes at all, you would see about a 3% win rate lift on Tahm Kench with literally 0 lines of text, because people in general got better at Tahm Kench and are now playing him with higher competence. So there is a huge point to be made here that there is an automatic 3% win rate lift just because it's going to happen patch over patch. That will trickle down over time. That will fall off over time, but it will still be here for the next patch as well. Like if there are no changes to Tahm Kench in this patch, it'll still be plus 1% win rate in 11-15. But that said, the buffs that Tahm Kench got are worth about, I would say, 3% win rate or so. I mean, we knew they were objectively more powerful. The design writers went out and said this was going to be a buff. And yeah, Tahm Kench is definitively in a very good spot in top lane. If you want to win some top lane games on Tahm Kench, go for it. I'm not saying he's the literal best top laner in League of Legends, but he is clearly worth playing and worth getting your time into. Next up is Irelia actually, this is strictly buffs. Now, again, as we talked about in the preamble, there really is a big factor here in terms of depending on what elo you're in, it's going to be a little bit different. In general, right, early game is going to be more punished in higher elo. Irelia got nerfed in the early game, buffed in the late game, and keep in mind the vast majority of players are in silver and gold. Silver makes up, I want to say, about 35% of the population. Gold makes up about 25% of the population. Platinum and bronze reach about 10%. So like that's where 95% of your players live, are between silver and plat. And if you're in diamond or you're in masters plus, you're going to play pro play. Irelia did not get buffed as much as these numbers say. That said, Irelia is very clearly in a really good spot for solo queue. I don't know for sure, and there wouldn't be enough data for me to reliably say anyway, if she is still high elo skewed, but she's very much a good pick and worth playing. Irelia is another outstanding option. Of note, she actually gained more in mid than in top, but this can easily be due to variance, and you shouldn't put too much stock into a, plus or minus 1% win rate delta when we're looking at, a fraction of a set of games from only some of the servers. So it's not going to be outstanding. Next up is Lilia, who also gained quite a bit. Shout out to the designer who managed to, I'm going to repeat what I said, that, okay, plus minus 1% is not reliable this early on. So, Irelia may or may not have actually gained more in mid lane. Lilia may or may not have gained more in jungle than in top lane. I know it's kind of important that Lilia gains more in jungle than in top lane. You can see with a higher percentage gained, she's still a lower win rate jungler than top laner. So hey, some potential issues here. But hey, Lilia has probably gotten to the highest win rate she has ever gotten to in solo queue. Hopefully the compensatory nerfs for pro play are meaningful, the ones where she has much less CC through her ultimate, the flash Q Zhonya's, flash Q ult Zhonya's maybe, is going to be as strong of a play because the sleep doesn't last as long. We'll see, but hey, Lilia is landed in a pretty decent spot. If you like playing Lilia, you're totally viable to play Lilia. Go to this column again. Yeah, Garen gained pretty well. Obviously, he just gained 5% move speed on his Q. He gained a bunch of execute damage on his R. Obviously, it's going to be really powerful. Garen is definitely in a pretty good spot. Keep in mind, Garen is low elo skewed, so we are measuring just a lot of bronze, silver, and then even gold games. If you are playing in high elo, Garen's not going to be quite as good. But if you're playing, sub plat, like Garen is outstanding, go for it. Even in plat itself, Garen is going to be fine, and I think a reasonable pick overall. So hey, totally reasonable champion. Graves got 2 AD. There you go. Of note, I find this actually kind of interesting that now the sample is again going to be very, very small here because Graves top and mid are not very popular. So this is something you might have to, like, if you want to do this yourself, by the way, like, come back in a week. This page will still be here. It's literally just the front page of Lawlytics. Just go to all elo just to get more sample and like look at this again and see if this remains within 0.5% and this remains 1.5%. Because that'll be really interesting to see if flat AD, affects jungle way more than it affects lanes. My intuition is that should be true because flat AD, right, helps your jungle clear, which is like objectively, you're getting more gold and XP. Whereas in mid lane, like, yeah, you might miss last hits less frequently, but you're not getting less XP reliably. So, or more XP reliably. So, this well and truly could be more of a jungle focused buff in actuality. Next up is Darius. Darius still has a problem of building slightly incorrectly. At least when I looked in the middle of last patch, there were a lot of Darius Stridebreaker games. Those were not particularly effective. He's much better going for either Gore Drinker and just frontlining better, or Trinity Force for the movement speed, because the overall movement speed the Trinity Force gives is quite nice. It's, just generally going to be better. Also, it's a Sheen item, which is a big deal as well. So, in general, Darius is still a victim of building the wrong items a little bit, but doesn't seem to be in an outstanding spot. But plus 1.4% win rate is still pretty good. Now, again, some of this is going to be follow-up off the patch. If people are getting off of Stridebreaker and building correct mythics, like that will be a win rate lift. But I am surprised to see only 1.4%, even with both those factors kind of combined together. So Darius may be in a slightly weak spot, but not completely horrible. 20 shielding on Ivern, not a big surprise down there. Seraphine honestly has gained a little bit less than I would thought. These win rates are resting lower than I expected her to. She is, via this metric, not really overperforming in bottom lane. I have an instinct that this is somewhat still people building incorrect mythics on her, that, she's not getting as big of a buff if you're not going for full AP builds. If you're just doing, Moonstone Renewer and all the supportive stuff, you can get more AP otherwise. So, but either way, the end result is Seraphine is clearly fine. She's clearly a passable champion. So, but from this data, not in dire need of getting picked immediately. Looking at Ziggs here, I know we're skipping over Mundo and Karma. We'll get to them in a second. Ziggs is interesting. Now, again, sample size is always going to be a thing. Ziggs bottom is very, very unpopular, so it's always going to be tough to figure out. His pick rate, despite the nerf, is still climbing. So people are actively figuring out that Ziggs is a good champion. Now, actually, I'm not 100% certain if this pick stat is all roles, or like the champion overall in all roles, or if this pick stat is in the primary role. I don't actually know. But you can see that Ziggs got nerfed right in this patch, but his overall pick rate is higher because people had picked, people hadn't been picking Ziggs at the beginning of 11-13, had by the end of 13 figured out, oh, Ziggs is really good, we should play Ziggs. And that hasn't fallen off after the nerf, right? So people have figured out that Ziggs is very good. So anytime you see a nerf with a play rate increase, that means people figured out during the course of the patch the champion was good. Which, like, again, I really tried hard to, like, yell and tell people about back in 11.12. He is, in fact, this powerful. So he's still, holding on to the pick rate. But again, worth noting, the bottom lane win rate drop is less severe than the mid lane win rate drop, which is definitely surprising, right? The expectation was that spamming mana and auto pushing was going to be a bigger deal in bottom lane. So there really may need to be some like scaling stat increases for Ziggs to push him towards higher XP lanes like mid, and they'll figure out over time how they can get Ziggs into a good spot. But yeah, you can see the win rate even after a nerf is still quite good in bot lane, so Ziggs is still a very, very strong pick down there. Dr. Mundo, the goal was to buff jungle and nerf top lane. Keep in mind, Dr. Mundo is having the exact same effect that we saw with champions like Tahm Kench, where he was reworked in the previous patch. People are getting better at the champion over the course of time, and so if there was no notes at all for Dr. Mundo, you'd expect like 2 to 3% win rate growth. In fact, what I recall from looking at Dr. Mundo on the first day of the patch, if I recall correctly, there might have been a hotfix and I forgot about it. He was sub 50% win rate on day one of the patch. And what we come down to here is, okay, unsurprisingly, people didn't play more Mundo as the patch came out because, of course, what is it? You're going to try the new champion instantly, and then if you like it, you're going to stay. If you don't like it, you're just going to play 1 or 2 games and get off. So, but certainly a very strong champion, definitely in a very good spot. So even after all of the people are looking at the champions, there's going to be patch over patch win rate growth. The nerf managed to make it a minus 0.25 across the patch overall, so definitely weaker than before. But yeah, Dr. Mundo is yet another very, very strong, very viable top laner to go along with Irelia and Tahm Kench as really, really good top laners worth playing. Jungle win rate gained quite a lot. That's very good. Obviously, again, a factor here is people learning the champion, but there were jungle-specific buffs. Dr. Mundo obviously is still way better of a top laner than a jungler, so they'll still have to figure out how to fix that skew because it's still 4% win rate off, roughly, and that's a really, really big deal. Just for points of reference, by the way, because you can see 27,000 games in Dr. Mundo. I just realized this number was here. I didn't see it before. If you have 10,000 games on a champion, overall, and keep in mind, this is split across roles, so good luck with that one. If you have 10,000 games on a champion, your 95% confidence interval for win rate is plus or minus 2%. What this means is, let's say we have, who's got 10,000 games? Tahm Kench, okay? So Tahm Kench has about 10,000 games on him, and let's assume it's all in one role somehow or whatever. This means if you look at a win rate and you say, okay, he is 52.73% right now, you are 95% confident that the real win rate over 100,000 more games over the rest of the patch is going to be between 50.7 and 54.7. And 5% of the time, which by the way, there's 150 champions, which means for 8 champions like this, for 8 champions, every patch that you see 11,000 games and this win rate, on 8 of them, they're below 50 or above 55. Right? Just pretty much factually, that's just going to happen. Just because that's how variance works, more or less. I'm a little bit simplifying, but not really by much. So this is to say, okay, we are pretty confident Tahm Kench is in fact ending as a very strong top laner, but there is a small chance it's not quite there. And so when we go back to Dr. Mundo, right, and you're well, if he's playing 3 times as many games in top lane as he is in jungle, it's well, then we have 6,000 jungle games, and our variance is, our 95% confidence interval is more 3% around there, right? And it's okay, well, there's actually a decent chance that it's just variance and Mundo jungle is actually above 50% win rate. I'm not saying that's really true, but hey, by the way, some quick data terms for you. Karma lost 2 AD. It didn't mean a whole lot. Lost 3 AD. Didn't move support, of course, very much. Karma, reasonably popular. Again, top and mid are not popular pick roles for her, so I imagine they're both at about 1,000 games each, and you're gonna have really high variance here. And so you can't really be confident that there's absolutely zero chance that 0.07% is the actual win rate difference, because your variance is so much higher than that. Alawi gained quite a bit, 11, right? So 15,000 games. They're almost all going to be in top lane. Again, our variance is plus or minus about 1.7% or something like this. Do I think this is going to end up being a nerf? No, right? No, I don't think we're in the bottom 20% of variance here where it was actually a nerf to buff her movement speed. That would be really silly. But okay, there is still some variance here. But clearly doing reasonably well as a champion, not absurdly overpowered. Kind of worth noting that 10 move speed was a 1% win rate bump on a melee champion who direly needs movement speed. Worth noting, right? Rek'Sai, very small buff here as well. Again, Rek'Sai, very, very unpopular. Right? You can't reliably say it was plus 0.6%. Again, the variance is really, really high there. But again, it was objectively a buff, sure, so that should be obvious, but we'll see what happens out of that one. We go down to the rest of this one. Okay, so Xin Zhao, or we'll pick up Malzahar because that's where we were picking up last time. Reasonably popular, right? 18,000 games. You're pretty confident these numbers are going to be close to accurate. Solid mid-sized nerf. Okay, still overall strong champion. Not really overbearing, but certainly very strong. Worth playing, of course. Xin Zhao, really well-sized nerf. This landed a good spot. You can see Xin Zhao is very, very popular, right? So when you see this, right, you're oh, 63,000 games. It's okay, so we have 6 times the games. So we're looking at plus or minus under 1%, basically. for the variance here. So we're like really, really, really confident that Xin Zhao indeed lost about 1.5% win rate and that his real win rate is about 51%. He is still strong. He's still a good champion. He is still worth playing, but he's no longer an auto ban. And again, you can see this thing here, right? Where people over the course of the patch realized Xin Zhao was a top dog jungler, right? People didn't realize on day one of 11.13. They realized it by the end of 11.14, and despite nerfs coming in, are still holding on to their habits of Xin Zhao as a strong jungler. And indeed he is, but people need to fall off. This ban rate should be about 2%. Akali, everything was an objective nerf, so it's no surprise here. You could actually spend a little bit of time graphing her win rate with Elo. Again, 42,000 games gives you enough confidence that you could like go look at silver games and gold games and plat games to get a decent sense of which way things are moving. You can probably do an okay job with gold or with diamond plus as well. That gets a bit low because keep in mind, diamond is like 1.5% of the population, like around there. So, you know, you're looking at 6,000 diamond plus Akali games. That's a lot of variance. You're going to have a decent, you know, idea of what's going on. But again, you're looking at plus or minus 2.5%. So just like, again, things to keep in mind on day one, it's a bit tough. But yeah, objective nerfs, okay, she is, as she always has been for the vast majority of the time, not quite viable for most players in solo queue. I can be viable technically if you're good at the champion, cool, but, you know, sub 50% win rate. Then the big one, this actually surprised me quite a lot, Nocturne got deleted from solo lanes. And I am shocked it was this big. So obviously, jungle win rate is still about 52%. Again, reasonably popular champion. We're pretty confident in these numbers. 52% win rate is still totally reasonable. He is still a objectively good jungler. Nocturne is good and playable and a completely viable jungler. Absolutely. The ban rate obviously skyrocketing over the course of the patch. He lost, again, 2% win rate down there. He lost flex pick, but, you know, people are going to learn it over time. So, but this I'm actually reasonably confident in because Nocturne actually has a pretty fair sort of pick rate skew. Like about half his games are in jungle, but about a quarter in top and mid. So he's actually like reasonably popular. He's got probably more than 10,000 games in each of those roles right now in this patch. And so we're really confident that like we're looking at, you know, at minimum minus 5%. And this is a really, really, really big deal. The half damage and half healing from minions did so much to push Nocturne out of the lanes. I really didn't think it was going to be this big of a nerf. Obviously, 2% off a Stride Breaker, yeah, bam, Nocturne Jungle hit that. But losing another 4% off the minion mod is really absurd. That's actually incredible how much the sustain and pushing mattered. That's really mind-boggling. But I'm pretty confident these numbers are straight up just like accurate. These are the numbers. This is how much it got hit by. So wow, goodbye to Nocturne in the lanes. We will not miss you. Jungle Nocturnes, truly, this champion, like, if Jungle Nocturnes come out of the woodwork and be like, Riot, you ruined my champion, please tell them they are trolling. Nocturne Jungle is clearly still very good. He is no longer the literal best champion in the game, but he is still very good. He came out better than Xin Zhao, despite the nerfs being heavier because he's a stronger champion. Came out better than Shaco. Overall, still a very strong jungler. Probably still going to be a top 10 jungler in League of Legends. Totally worth your time to play the champion. And then finally, we have Shaco. I'm going to personally say good riddance. Not a big fan of the champion. Not a big surprise to see that support Shaco got nerfed less hard. But yeah, a solid 2% win rate drop. Shaco is still, yes, indeed, quite popular. We are very confident this is the severity of the nerf. 5 move speed and 27 health did a lot. I find it kind of interesting that 10 move speed did this. Sure, there's some you know, a bit more variance in this win right here. But 5 move speed and 27 did way more. Now, you could argue move speed means a lot more for a jungle. I would tend to agree. Flat health, I'm surprised it means that much, but yeah, Shaco, we're pretty reliably going to say, like, yep, he actually lost as much win rate. So here you go. That's the TLDR on the patch. The big winners are Tahm Kench is great, Irelia is great, Lilia is finally playable, Mundo is still great in the top lane, Ziggs is still great in the bot lane, Malzahar is still great in the mid lane and the top lane, Xin Zhao is still quite good, Nocturne's still a great jungler, Illaoi's fine, Seraphine's pretty good, Ivern's pretty much only good if you're a main, Darius isn't too great. Graves is fine. Garen's doing quite well. Tarek's doing very well. And Rek'Sai needs to learn to max E, basically. But otherwise, yeah, not that outstanding. So that's the patch. That's the fallout of the patch. Again, plus or minus 2% at 10,000 games. Keep in mind that, you know, 1 out of 20 of these is going to be, well, if they had 10,000 games, these guys have more than that, right? But, you know, 1 out of every 20 games, or 1 out of every 20 champions with only 10,000 games is going to be outside those bounds. Outside those 2% bounds. So FYI, there's what that is. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.